Okay, let's dive right into this aesthetic crisis. Right now, our dopamine-depleted brains are being absolutely overloaded on platforms like Instagram and TikTok. You know the vibe: frantic, fast-paced edits, heavily relying on quick pans, aggressive motion blur, and intense sound design. It's stimulating for sure, but man, it is incredibly exhausting to watch. But you know, this overload perfectly sets the stage for a much more soothing alternative: the incredibly calm, static postcard trend that's currently sweeping social media. You've probably seen them. Postcards from Tokyo, postcards from Paris. They're serene, perfectly still, and they feel incredibly realistic.
So, let's break down the psychology and practicality of going static. We're going to explore exactly why an unmoving camera works so well, because it goes way beyond just looking pretty. What's truly fascinating is the psychological shift that happens when a camera doesn't move. By putting your camera on a locked-off tripod, you completely remove the operator's physical influence from the footage. You're subconsciously telling the viewer that there's no person present dictating the scene or influencing the subjects. It creates this authentic, voyeuristic experience. A wide static tripod shot doesn't just record a scene, it actively mimics how our own human eyes actually observe the real world. You feel like you're truly watching reality unfold naturally.
Beyond the psychology, the tripod brings some massive, undeniable practical benefits to your workflow. First off, it literally forces you to slow down. You have to purposefully plant your camera and get highly intentional about your framing and composition. Second, and let's just be honest here, it brilliantly solves the practical reality of solo filmmaking, specifically the very common problem of having a lack of friends available to hold the camera for you. Third, while flashy transition trends will inevitably come and go, a beautifully composed static shot will never ever go out of style. And finally, it creates an unmatched, completely stable blank canvas for your editing process.
To put this into perspective, look at the sheer impact of static framing on the highest levels of cinema. Take the highly acclaimed, award-winning film The Zone of Interest. An absolutely astounding 95% of the shots in this film are static tripod shots. Whether that was a broad creative decision or just a specific aesthetic choice, the result is undeniable. The movie relies almost entirely on the tripod to create this profoundly realistic, almost documentary-like experience that deeply affects you in a way a moving camera simply never could.
All right, let's move into post-production and talk about mastering the static edit.
Capturing the shot is really only half the battle. What you do with it in the editing bay is where the static frame truly shines. If you're worried a static shot is going to bore your audience, you can easily elevate it without ever touching a gimbal. First, just lock the shot down firmly on location. Second, when you bring it into your editing software, you can manually add quick digital zooms or fast cuts to inject energy exactly where you want it. And third, take full advantage of how insanely easy static shots are to color grade. Because the light and framing aren't shifting all over the place, you can apply your color grades, power grades, or presets with incredible ease, turning a basic shot into a gorgeous cinematic masterpiece in seconds.
Any experienced editor will tell you this absolute truth. There have been far too many cases of an incredible, once-in-a-lifetime take being totally ruined by a sudden, jarring camera movement. By keeping the camera perfectly still on a classic old three-leg tripod, you guarantee that a brilliant performance or a perfect moment of lighting is preserved flawlessly. The fact that the tripod cannot move is exactly what makes it so great. The static shot is simply unmatched. Now that we've firmly mastered that static foundation, let's break some rules and talk about creative rigs.
We know why stillness is so powerful, but how can we hack this ancient tool to get some unconventional, dynamic shots out in the wild? You might be asking yourself a very practical question. What happens if I'm out in the field, maybe traveling, and I don't have my heavy gear with me? Can I literally become my own tripod?
The answer is, surprisingly, yes. While we usually call this a handheld shot, you can totally transform yourself into a human tripod. The formula is super simple. Hold the camera in your hands, plant your feet, brace your arms, and remain as physically still as humanly possible while rolling. Then, you take that footage, drop it into your editing software, and heavily stabilize it in post-production. The result? You've successfully faked a perfect locked-off tripod shot using nothing but your own body and a little bit of software magic.
And if you really want to push the boundaries, you can relentlessly switch up your visuals to keep the audience engaged, using rhythmic groupings of 3. Vary your shot sizes from wide to medium to extreme close-up. Change the psychological feel by tilting into a high angle, a low angle, or even a disorienting Dutch angle. Or utilize some brilliant movement hacks. Use a fluid head to do aggressive whip pans. Attach the folded tripod to yourself for an intense snorcam shot. Place it on the front of a boat,
Or even strap it to some PVC pipes and skateboard wheels for a brilliant DIY dolly effect. The creative possibilities are literally endless.
Now, while attaching cheap skateboard wheels to a basic tripod works perfectly fine for most of us, it's worth noting the modern gear industry has taken the tripod to absolute extremes. There are currently motorized, fully robotic tripods on the market that move completely by themselves, but they carry an absolutely mind-blowing price tag of up to $30,000. That creates what we can really only call the "I cannot afford this" aesthetic. It looks incredibly cool for sure, but for the solo creator, it is massive overkill.
So, to avoid going bankrupt chasing that robotic aesthetic, let's look at what you realistically need in your toolkit. The ideal solo creator's arsenal is actually remarkably simple. First, a solid, incredibly lightweight travel rig equipped with a fluid head, absolutely essential for those smooth pans and aggressive whips. Second, a tiny table tripod for when you need a quick desk angle or product shot. And finally, a heavy, reliable backup tripod. Honestly, even if it's a terrible one you saved from a friend who is throwing it in the trash, never throw away a heavy tripod. That is really all you need to create cinematic magic.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought before your next shoot. Are you going to keep chasing the algorithm, exhausting yourself and your viewers with chaotic motion, aggressive blur, and frantic cuts? Or are you ready to embrace the oldest tool in cinema, lock down your frame, let the scene breathe, and allow true cinematic reality to unfold right in front of the lens? The choice is entirely yours, but I promise you, the static shot is simply unmatched. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.